Good morning. I will welcome you to today's regular board meeting of the Desert Water Agency on November 4th, 2025, starting at 8 o'clock. And some housekeeping before we get started. I've asked everyone in the room with us today to make sure that your electronic devices are muted. And for those who are participating remotely, if you could keep your microphones muted until or unless you're ready to speak during public comment. For discussion and then questions, I'll call on directors in the following roll call order: Director Gracia, Director McKenna, Secretary Treasurer Bloomer, Vice President Bowman, and President Ortega, and all votes will be conducted via roll call. And with that, I'd like to ask Director Gracia to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Thank you. Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item 3 on our agenda for today is the roll call. Ms. Baca, you could conduct the roll call, please.
Director Gracia,
Present.
Director McKenna,
Present.
Secretary Treasurer Bloomer,
Present.
and Vice President Bowman is on vacation. His absence is noted. President Ortega.
Present. Thank you. Item 4 would be public comments on items not on today's agenda. So this would be an opportunity for members of the public to speak on a matter related to the business of the Desert Water Agency, but is not on today's agenda. We ask that speakers keep their comments to no more than 3 minutes, and as provided in the Brown Act, the board is prohibited from acting on items that are not listed on today's agenda. Ms. Baca, have we received any public comments prior to the meeting?
No comments have been received.
Okay. Are there any members of the public attending virtually, because we have nobody in the room today, who would like to speak on a matter related to the business of the water agency? Seeing none, we'll move to item 5, which would be public comments on items that are listed on today's agenda. Again, ask that you keep your comments to no more than 3 minutes. All right, seeing none, we can move to item 6, which is our consent calendar. Items listed under the consent calendar are considered to be routine and will be acted upon by one motion of the board without discussion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a board member requests a specific item to be discussed and or removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Are there any items on today's consent calendar that a director would like to pull for a separate discussion and action? If not, I'll look for a motion.
Move the consent calendar items as presented.
All right.
I'll second.
All right. I have a first from Director Gracia, a second from Secretary Treasurer Bloomer. And may we have the roll call vote, please?
Director Gracia,
Aye.
Director McKenna,
Aye.
Secretary Treasurer Bloomer,
Aye.
President Ortega,
Aye.
and Vice President Bowman's absence is noted. Motion passes.
Thank you. Item 7 is an action item. It is a request, 7A is a request approval of the 2025-2027 Memorandum of Understanding between the Desert Water Agency and Teamsters 1932. Is this going to be Esther who's going to report? Our general manager?
Presentation will be HR Director Hopping.
Okay, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you very much, President Ortega, members of the board. So this is an item to request approval of the 2025 to 2027 Memorandum of Understanding between the Desert Water Agency and Teamsters Local 1932. This agreement is from November 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2027. So Desert Water Agency, I represented Desert Water Agency along with Jason Slough, our finance director. We began negotiations back on July 10th of 2025 when Teamsters became the representative of the employees at the beginning of the year. Then they requested to begin the negotiations process. So that was our first meeting. So we had 7 negotiation sessions and 31 proposals were negotiated, and the tentative agreement was reached on October 15th, 2025. And the attached is the draft of the full memorandum of understanding, or MOU as they call it. They presented the MOU to their membership for ratification yesterday and to discuss the terms of the agreement. There were no concerns and it was voted for approval, so we're good to go with the membership. So to finalize the agreement, we're seeking the board's approval of the memorandum of understanding between Desert Water Agency and Teamsters Local 1932 as presented. And the fiscal impact to the negotiated items is $38,000. And Finance Director Slough has reviewed the report and has no budgetary concerns. So staff is recommending, and legal has reviewed this, of course. And staff is recommending that the Board of Directors approve the memorandum of understanding between Desert Water Agency and Teamsters Local 1932. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you. Director Gracia, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions. I'm assuming nothing's changed since we talked about this a few weeks ago.
No.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
All right, Director McKenna?
My only question would be if an employee is opting out, are these categories that are listed here, are they mandatory they join the Teamsters if they're in that category?
They are not. The way that it works is they can opt to be a member, and if they get voting rights and representative rights, if they choose not to be a member, they are still covered by the agreement. They just wouldn't get to vote on the contract.
Oh, oh.
Mhm.
And so we will presumably in the future negotiate with the union, establish the benefits, pay levels and so on, and then we will track the same thing for the non-union employees.
Right now, we have two groups of employees. So the ones that are listed here are all the ones that fall under the umbrella of Teamsters. So
Right.
whatever they agree to, that would be part of the contract and all of the membership would get that. The rest of the employees, which is the supervisors and the confidentials, as of right now, they get whatever is negotiated for them as well. And then next year or next negotiations, we would determine if we're gonna have a separate agreement for them or how we're gonna work that.
All right, thanks.
Mhm.
Secretary Treasurer Bloomer?
No questions.
And I have no questions, so unless there are any further discussion, I'll look for a motion.
I'll make a motion.
All right, first from Secretary Treasurer Bloomer, per second.
Second.
Thank you. From Director Gracia, a second. May we have the roll call vote, please?
Director Gracia,
Aye.
Director McKenna,
Aye.
Secretary Treasurer Bloomer,
Aye.
and President Ortega.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0 with, I'm sorry, Vice President Bowman's absence noted.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 8 would be a discussion item. 8A, draft sites reservoir benefits and obligations contract overview. General Manager Science.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. So what we would like to do today is go over the draft sites reservoir benefits and obligations contract. This is just a draft, but come around March 2026, the Sites Project Authority is expected to adopt a resolution to offer capacity in the Sites Reservoir. And that action, it's going to kick off a 6-month, we're calling it an escrow window, where all documents, all planning documents, all financing documents, everything will be frozen in time in their state at that point in time when it's deemed that we have the final drafts, and then provide us the opportunity to bring those documents and the final draft of this benefits and obligations contract to this board and all of the respective home boards of the participants to make the final determination of whether the agency is going to commit to that benefits and obligations contract, and therefore it is our commitment to our participation in the Sites Reservoir for the construction and funding of that construction and future operations, and will provide our essentially capacity interest share for the reservoir going forward. So what I wanted to do was bring this draft to you now. It is publicly available. It's provided by the Sites Reservoir Authority, the draft at this point in time. But I did not want to get to 6 months down the road when we're asking for final approval to bring it to you for the first time. So we do have the opportunity to review this contract in its current state, understanding that there may be some future changes to it as details in certain sections are still being worked out. but any feedback or concerns received will be shared with the site's authority for consideration during the final pre-execution review of the contract in December of 2025. And so with that, I'd like to move forward with the presentation that we've prepared. And this presentation really is to provide a summary of the key provisions within the contract. So it can facilitate a high level understanding of what's in there and any policy discussions that are to be had. Okay. See if, oh, and the clicker works for me today. Okay, so the purpose of the benefits and obligations contract is really establishing the rights and obligations for the design and ownership and construction operation. So essentially what that is, who's responsible for what and who's going to be paying for the benefits, and how is our relationship between all of the different entities laid out. The contracting parties is the site's project authority, the participating agencies of which there's 22 of us, individual agencies, which can be county entities, it could be water districts such as us and others, and the acquirer, which is DWR. With regards to the terms and applicability, and a point of note, each of these sections, I have attempted to summarize each section within the contract, but really each key term. And so there's notes and references in this presentation. So this one's for section 2, and it provides a section. You'll see some further on, there's multiple references. It's because there's references to that term or that condition in multiple places within the contract. So it's just so you can go back and we're talking, here's a summary, but I want to know the detail. You have the draft of the contract available to you in your packet where you can make future reference to it. So for the term, it is effective upon execution by all of the parties. And with that, will also be delivery of legal opinions and payment appendices within the contract itself. And the term of the contract will continue as long as there are obligations that exist under the contract. So that's supply, that's payments, and that's all inclusive as far as the obligations under the contract. Capacity interest. So what we're talking about when we talk about capacity interest is each participant receives a base facilities capacity interest. So think of that, that's your reservoir, and there are several participants that have signed on for a different share. And so it is not equal amongst all participants, but we have all invested in when we had made our original investments, Desert Water Agencies, our share was 6,500 acre feet. Now, over time, as the design and more understanding has come about with how the reservoir will be operated and constructed, more details have come about, and we've changed to a capacity share. And for Desert Water, because we will own and operate our own share of capacity within the reservoir, and it is not a guaranteed per acre foot per year amount, which kind of that previous 6,500 acre feet kind of represented, but we have shifted how it will be managed. And for Desert Water Agency, our share, what that 6,500 acre feet per year essentially was converted to was 40,521 acre feet within the 1.5 million acre foot reservoir. So that is our share of the reservoir, or our little piece of the pie that we have available to us to place water in. And that for the base facilities, and so that is the reservoir and a few of the pipelines, is 2.87% of the total project is Desert Water Agency's share. We also have a portion, with that share, we will be allocated a proportionate share of the diverted water which enters to the reservoir. So the maximum design capacity at this point in time is approximately 8,000 acre feet per day in optimal conditions. That's the maximum amount of water that could be diverted and placed into the reservoir. And so let's say 8,000 acre feet in a single day was diverted, it would be, assuming that everybody in the reservoir has available space, it would be divided proportionately. So Desert Water Agency would receive 2.87% of that 8,000 acre feet. And those diversions will be operated according to diversion criteria for environmental protections and other regulations and our water rights that we are seeking. Additionally, there's optional downstream facilities in which Desert Water Agency has a capacity share in as well. Now, it does say that they're optional, so not every participant in the site's reservoir is a participant in this downstream capacity. So think of it as north of Delta and south of Delta, essentially. So if you are north of Delta and you do not need to utilize the pipelines or the shared use facilities, some of them that are downstream of the reservoir, if you don't need to convey it through those facilities, you don't need to pay for those facilities. So there is a distinction between the base facilities and the downstream facilities. So for example, north of Delta, some north of Delta participants, they're going to have their own facilities to convey that water. So they do not need to pay for that. The whole principle of this project is the beneficiary pays. So we are not paying for somebody else's use. Therefore, if they're not using the downstream facilities, they will not pay for it and we get the benefit for it. So we need to pay our fair share of that. And Desert Water Agency of those downstream facilities is 3.49%. For the operations, water storage and releases will be implemented according to the site's operations plan, and that is a separate document that is under development at this time. When we are releasing water from the reservoir, there are losses, and those losses happen through the act of conveying the water. And they will be allocated proportionately among all storage partners. Well, there's losses within the site's project facilities as well as when you are conveying the water, there may be losses as well, such as when water is conveyed through the delta, there are losses built into that as well. Just as when we're talking about the state water project, there's water losses built into those allocations as well. So it's the same principles are being applied here. But the bottom line is that those losses will be shared proportionately based off of your capacity and your water. Diversions in the storage of site's water will be also in proportion to the storage partner's capacity interest. And I had touched on this a little bit earlier as well. But the nuance here is that every participant will have the capability to manage their own capacity share within that reservoir. So if I am essentially risk adverse and I just want to make sure to keep it full at all times, then we are missing out on some potential opportunities for when wet weather does come, because we wanted to make, if we say as an agency, we want to keep it full, just keep it topped off. Well, then when water comes, we're not going to be able to add any more to it. So we would be foregoing that water, and the water that's left on the table that we are unable to take gets split proportionately amongst all of the other participants who do have capacity remaining in the reservoir that can receive that water when it is available to be diverted. So it will be really important for the agency to determine our operational strategy as we move forward, to find out where our risk tolerance is for how much water we want to keep in there at any point in time, or are we just interested in maximizing our ability to take diversions. So those are future decisions to be made, but I just wanted to make it aware how that works if there is no room for a particular participant. Moving on with more of the operational provisions. The reservoir, there is the opportunity that other water may be stored in the site's reservoir. But site's water will always remain priority over other water. So if there's water that we can obtain and we want to place it into sites, there's a possibility to do that, but we're just not going to push out other people's sites' water in order to get it into the reservoir or out of the reservoir. Also, there are in the contract what is called primary and secondary delivery points. The primary delivery points, and I apologize, I did not put a map in here. There is a map within the contract itself. It's Exhibit 1 to Appendix 2. And when we bring this back in the future, I'll make sure to include that diagram for you, because pictures, I do understand, they do speak 1,000 words and they do help us. But Funk's Reservoir and the terminal regulating reservoir. So there's two reservoirs that are outside of the site's reservoir. They are smaller, and they are at the place where site's management or authority and responsibilities and obligations for the water and assisting to manage that water terminate. But they will help us coordinate the deliveries of site's water to secondary delivery points. And when we think secondary delivery points for Desert Water Agency, that would mean Banks Pumping Plant, and that is south of Delta, so that it can then be put into the State Water Project for delivery. So exports of site's water will occur at the Banks Pumping Plant under Article 55 of the State Water Contract. And again, those are for participants who need to utilize the State Water Project facilities in order to convey the water to their service areas, or for Desert Water Agency for exchange with Metropolitan. Site's water is non-project water, so it is non-State Water Project water to be conveyed during the transfer window, typically July through November, except for in wet years, because in wet years, we will be diverting water and there will be increased allocations on the State Water Project and therefore not capacity to transport this additional water pursuant to Article 55 of our State Water Project contract. So in summary, water will be diverted in proportion to our capacity interest in the reservoir. Releases will be at our discretion, giving consideration to available release windows and when capacity is available to release. And so essentially that means in drier years. Release water will return to the Sacramento River via the site's facilities and partner joint use facilities. Release water will then travel through the Delta, and release water will then be delivered to Banks Pumping Plant for export to Southern California, utilizing State Water Project facilities. For capital improvements, similar to what the agency does here at Desert Water, we do an annual CIP planning and longer term as well. But every year we take an in-depth review of our capital planning along with our budget cycle, similar to what will be occurring with the site's authority. Annual capital improvement plan will be provided by the site's authority for upgrades, and site's authority and participants may request improvements. So anybody who is at the table can essentially ask for improvements to the project that will provide additional benefit. Those capital improvements shall be subject to approval by the site's authority and by the participants. However, with the caveat that participants cannot opt out of essential improvements. For example, improvements required to maintain operations, to me, I would consider that essential, and that would be, in my mind, something that cannot be opted out of. So we would not be able to say, sorry, we don't want to pay for that capital improvement. We wouldn't have an option because we're talking about maintaining the operational operations of the facility. However, improvements to increase capacity, such as we hear sometimes reservoirs have their line things raised so that they can have additional capacity. That would be something that I would say, in my opinion, is optional, that we would have the opportunity to opt out of that additional expense because it is increasing the design and the capacity of the reservoir. So, but we will not be able to opt out of essential improvements. When it comes to financing within the B&O contract, there are two funding options. The first is financing participants. So participants can say whether that they want to be involved with the financing, essentially paying a monthly payment on your capacity share. And that will, Sites Authority may use EPA WIFIA loans, which they have been working to secure and have been working with over the years, as well as state and federal loans and potential for revenue bonds as long-term project financing. And Desert Water Agency has selected this method of financing is to pay over time. There are also a few self-funding participants, and so there's an option out there to either pay for all or some of their fixed project costs, so for the upfront construction costs by cash. When it comes to these cost obligations, as I mentioned before, there is the beneficiary pays principle, which means each participant pays for their proportionate share of all of the associated costs. So that would be construction, ongoing operation and maintenance, variable operation and maintenance. So it's all based off of the costs that are associated to your capacity share and what you're moving. So the participants pay for the fixed project costs, which is the construction and the future capital improvements. Also, the fixed operation and maintenance costs. So those are your non-variable annual maintenance costs. And your variable O&M, which is based off of the water that you are transporting. So if you are diverting, you're diverting or you are releasing a quantity of water, you are charged that variable cost associated with that diversion or release in accordance with per acre foot that you have diverted or released. And also for those who have selected the financing method,
Can I ask a quick question? The fixed project cost is at the 2.87%, our storage capacity percentage?
That is correct, yes.
And then
Well, there is some downstream facilities and there is some base capacity facilities. It's based off of those two percentages depending on where that capital cost originates from.
And then the variable, because that's when we're moving the water, would that be at the higher percentage or it's a combination of percentages?
This is not based off of percentage. So if we're moving water and if we never released anything out of the reservoir, we would not pay anything and therefore we would not be charged anything for the release. But and also if we weren't able to, didn't have any storage space available to divert into, we wouldn't have to pay for any of those costs. But once you start doing those things, and let's say participant A released, they took up 50% of the capacity of the releases and we took up the other 50% and we were the only two that released, we would be paying those costs.
Got it.
And similar to, when I think of variable costs, I think of how it works on the State Water Project. We have a cost per year per acre foot that it's going to cost. And this is an area where we're still working on the details of how all those costs come. And so we'll be able to provide more information in that future. But at this point in time, we are responsible for our portion of the operation and maintenance, variable operation and maintenance, as well as the other costs. With the cost obligations, also, they are absolute and unconditional. And so that means that if the project completion is delayed, we would still be responsible for the costs that were incurred. And so this is, of course, a risk that we would be taking when we get to the point of committing to the benefits and obligations contract. There are clauses that we'll get into later. That is, what if the project terminates? Well, we would be responsible to the costs up until that point. And also, whatever the state and federal storage partners do not pay must be paid by participants in proportion to their capacity interests. And use of such capacity, we will get the benefit of that as we are paying for that capacity until the point where that non-payment is cured by the federal or state storage partners. And so essentially participants are a backstop for the state and federal storage partners, and which is again, another risk. Within the contract, it does outline the different flexibilities within the contract. And that is the trading and leasing of capacity. Participants may lease or sell their capacity interest within the site's reservoir project. Of course, it is subject to specific conditions, such as if it is a lease or a sale of capacity, if it's a sale, as well as if it is a lease, a long-term lease of capacity within the reservoir that is greater than 10 years, it requires approval by the site's authority and and also the Reservoir Management Board approval is required for that. Also, prior to the sale or lease of any of that capacity, there will need to be review by the site's authority staff for feasibility. So it needs to be verified that it is possible. And then also for lease of capacity for 10 years or less, it's not subject to approval. So for shorter term, and by short term, I mean 10 years and under, we do not need to gain approval of the Reservoir Authority Board or site's authority to be able to make that transaction. However, us as a participant would remain responsible for the contractual obligations. Additional conditions are that it may not negatively impact other participants' right to store or convey water. And given that the financing methods are, the goal is to have them tax exempt bond rules. And so rules and conditions will apply, and we'll need to make sure that if the agency so chooses to lease or sell any of our capacity, that we do not negatively impact those bond rules. Also, other participants within the project, so current participants, those other 22 that I had mentioned, they will have the first right of refusal if we ever decided to sell or lease any of our capacity. And prior to selling or leasing to a non-participant. So that's an entity that may be on a waiting list or may be not a part of the site's project or what they consider the site's project family just yet. But the bottom line, we may sell or exchange sites water with other participants or other entities after demonstrating certain operational and financial conditions are being met. For the defaults and remedies, this is section 10 within the contract. Non-payment or failure to perform will result in default. And the remedies, essentially, they are the loss of project benefits while in default and may lead to the forced sale of capacity interest and up to judicial enforcement. And when default happens, there is what is called the default waterfall. And that is essentially the process that will be undertaken if and when a participant is in default. So the first step in the process will be a written demand. If we are 30 days delinquent, payment then you are considered in default. And you have, when you are delinquent, you have 30 days to commence efforts to cure that default. Of course, the goal would be to have 100% cure by that 30 days, but within the contract itself, it indicates that you need to at least commence the cure and be working towards that and showing those good faith efforts and working with the authority to cure that default. However, there is a limit on that. It is 90 days for full remedy of the non-payment to bring the agency out of default if we were late on a payment. The second step that happens is a sale of capacity interest to non-defaulting storage partners. So again, this follows that same principle that if you wanted to voluntarily sell or lease, you would first right of refusal to the current project participant. Same thing happens here, except for this is a forced sale of your interest by the site's authority. And that is to other entities who already have capacity. So step number 3 is if all or none of that available capacity that is being forced is being sold, that would then go to outside entities who are interested. So first right of refusal, and then it goes to other entities who would like to participate. And if if site's authority is unsuccessful in selling off or finding essentially a home for 100% of that defaulted capacity, then there is a pro rata distribution amongst the remaining non-defaulting participants. So again, the participants are ultimately a backstop because we need to make sure that there is 100% participation and that we are financially secure by having everything paid for essentially. Now, there is also a risk that the project may fail. And so if the project is deemed infeasible or funding fails, we need to be prepared for what to do if that happens. And so there is a wind-up process included in the contract, and generally it indicates that assets will be disposed of and there will be a repayment of obligations to this point, and there will be a distribution of everything that has been invested to this point. So asset disposition, repay the obligations to wind everything up. If there is a dispute, there will be a mandatory informal negotiation as a first step, which will progress to non-binding mediation and then eventually to court. And the court is County of Colusa, which is where the project is located, is specified as the venue for those proceedings. And the participant must exhaust all informal negotiation and mediation methods of dispute resolution prior to recourse in the court of law. So that was the high-level overview of the benefits and the terms of the benefits and obligations contract, but where are we going next? So in November, December, so this month or next, we are anticipating receiving the site's water right decision. And with that in hand, we'll be able to move forward to March 2026. It is anticipated that the Sites Project Authority will take action to adopt a resolution to offer capacity. And with that resolution, it's going to include the program baseline report in which there will be an updated cost estimate based off of the level of design that will be obtained prior to this offer of capacity. Also, this benefits and obligations contract will be in its final draft form, which will be included in that resolution, as well as revised joint powers agreements and bylaws. In September 2026, we hope to gain full investor commitment, and there is an asterisk next to that saying that the state of California will be the last investor to commit, and that is based off of the Prop 1 statutes, and we are planning for that to happen in September 2026. So the escrow period will start after the March 2026 offer of capacity. So the clock will start running, and that's going to be approximately a 6-month timeframe. And then the state of California will be the last one to sign on after all other participants sign on and adopt the resolution to offer capacity. And then hopefully we will get to groundbreaking in October 2026. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have, as well as I had mentioned before, I was communicating with Jerry Brown, who is the executive director of the Sites Project Authority, and he had indicated if you have any questions, comments, concerns about the benefits and obligations contract in December, they'll be doing that final review, as I mentioned in the staff report, and they'd be happy to take anything that you have, whether it be today or follow up later with me so that I can pass that along. They will address that during that time.
Okay, thank you. Director Gracia.
Our agreement with the Met on our exchange agreement, and I know you're in the process of updating that. Are there going to be any language in there that addresses this in terms of our ability to access this via the aqueduct at some point in the future?
In our current exchange agreement, it does provide the provision to transport other water.
Oh, okay.
However, this is a point of discussion for
Oh.
the contract.
I would think it should be actually named as one of our sources, I think. I don't know anything, but I think that should be in there. And so the feds have been very cooperative in their financing and providing various grants and so forth. Are they yet taking a piece of the project in terms of a percentage for them? You know, that some of that water is going to be federal water, and what effect does that have on our percentage? I know we can't do this without them, but just exactly how much are they? I mean,
There is a federal share, and it is already baked into those percentages in what they are funding. So our percentage at this point in time is unchanged. It is still our 2.84, I think, percent. And so, and that includes when we're talking 100%, they do have a share that they are funding. And that is in the reservoir itself.
and is the Met in it yet, or am I mixing?
Metropolitan is a participant, yes.
Okay, and have they voted to fund? I know there was a lot of things going on over there recently, and I think it revolved around this partly, at least.
At this point in time,
Sounds like they're in it, but
at this point in time, they are participating. They are a participant and they have a capacity share. However, no one has taken final actions yet to actually be a final participating member, as in signing this benefits and obligations contract. No one has taken that action yet because we are not to that point yet. Everyone has been contributing and participating in the development and planning, and we will make those decisions come around April to September.
there's talk at some boards of their worry of not having the water available at some certain points due to, you know, drought and weather and whatnot. We don't have that problem because we have a source that's kind of always there, right? The aquifer. Apparently, there's a lot of agencies that don't have that, or at least some. And I think some of them, I don't know if they're getting cold feet. I don't know if that would be a way to put it, but that's been a part of, we don't have that issue. So we can take it anytime, any place, you know. And if we aren't getting it, and if we're doing something else with it, But it seems to me that we need to have it spelled out that with Met that we can, take it in that agreement. We'll cover that too.
Yes, your comments are noted.
Yeah. So anyway, I think we're on the right track.
All right, Director McKenna.
I have to thank Director Carrasco for that first question about the Met agreement dovetailing with this one, the sites agreement. I was going to ask that.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's obviously important that they, in terms of the duration of those agreements, that they match, that we don't want to find that we have sites water entitlement and Met says, oh, we're not interested in bringing that down to you. So that's a consideration. I had a question. The total project cost publicly revealed anyway is about 6.8 billion at the moment. If we had to pay 2.87% of that ourselves, it's 190 million. It's $8,000 per customer there, more or less. Do we know what, this is asking, I'm asking you to guess really. Do you know what the final federal and state contribution will be towards that 6.8 billion?
I do not have those figures available at this time. For the discussion today, it was purely on the benefits and obligations, and anything relating to finances we'll be bringing back at a later date.
I'm going to guess.
Right, Secretary Treasurer Bloomer.
My only question is, do these change if and when this becomes part of the state water contract and our statement of charges? Does it all change on any of our obligations or how things work? Or is that like I don't know what on the timeline when that's decided?
So this
And it's fine if
water,
you don't have an answer at all.
according to Article 55, it will become non-project water to be transported through. So it doesn't change. Yeah, so it's a part of Article 55 and the availability to be able to transport non-project water through because it is considered
Through the state.
non-project water.
Through state water project facilities. Okay, thanks.
Well, first of all, this sounds like a really complicated accounting. Like there's so much moving and different percentages and you paying for this and not paying for that. And it sounds like a nightmare. But I'm more interested really in, and maybe this is really a refresher for me. So what's the actual governance and what is our role in that governance as an agency?
So the agency is currently on the Sites Reservoir Authority Board. And so there's a Sites Project Authority and then there is a Sites Reservoir Board. So you have these two different entities that work together. And we are a voting participant on the Sites Reservoir Board.
And that vote is proportional?
Each participant has one vote.
Oh, okay. So it's not based on our contribution
Mm,
at all, other than the fact that we're contributing.
That, as it moves forward, we do have the revised joint powers agreements and bylaws, and I believe that that's going to be covered in that when we get, when those are revised moving forward. But as of right now, we have one vote.
Mhm. All right, thank you. Anything else?
We're not voting on anything, right?
Not today,
No.
no.
Yes, the intent today is just to start to convey all this information so that when we get down the road and as we have more information available that's more solidified, we will be providing that. We just did not want to come and rush the decision and rush the understanding. And so this is the opportunity to just start to communicate these things, and we'll be bringing this back in the future.
I wanted to mention that Western Water had a discussion about this at their last meeting. It was not an agendized item and it went on for 10 minutes and they were told they need to shut up and put it on the agenda. It was very enlightening and very helpful for me. And if anyone wants to watch it, it's about 10 minutes long and it's their last meeting.
All right. So as far as bringing this back to the board, are you suggesting that there might be more, it might show up again as a discussion item, or is your intent to bring something back once we have the draft contract, the final draft?
At this point in time, I think I'm going to have to, time will tell as we get more information, as things to see if there is, if we're at a good place where we can kind of provide a nice package. If it's before the final package, I'll just have to let you know on that and make that determination as more information becomes available.
Okay, thank you. All right, we can move on then to item 9, which is the Secretary Treasurer's report for September 2025.
Okay, these are the financial highlights for September 2025. In the operating fund, we received $4,369,959 in water sales revenue receipts, $113,851 in recycled water sales revenue receipts, $700 in construction deposits. We paid $4,234,493 in accounts payable. Year to date, our water sales are 2% over budget, and our total revenues are 3% over budget, and our total expenses are 17% under budget. There were 23,861 active potable water services billed in September 2025 compared to 23,813 active potable water services billed in August of 2025. We had a net increase of 48 active services. There were 80 water accounts turned off for non-payment in September. Over the past 12 months, an average of 35 accounts per month turned off for non-payment. So that September was a high month. And a 1.8% annual disconnection rate. In the general fund, we received $19 in property taxes. Big month. $133,194 in power sales from the hydro. And we paid $3,292,876 in state water project charges. And our year-to-date payments are $7,861,781. In the wastewater fund, we received $21,612 in interest receipts. And we paid $118,288 in accounts payable. And that can, active sewer accounts were 2,297 in September, and that compared to 2,294 active sewer accounts billed in August of 2025. That was a net increase of 3 active services billed. And that concludes the highlights.
All right. Are there any questions for our Secretary Treasurer?
Can we zero in on the state water project charges? One of you, somebody?
Sure.
The
The finance director has all
most,
the
yeah.
answers.
Is that all water, or is there some, how does that split out? Because we're buying water and we're also maintaining the system. Is there 2 different, do they charge that all at once or in one charge, or are we paying? How do we do that?
So we have monthly fixed charges that would be related to the capital component and the maintenance of the system. And then we do get variable invoices. The timing of those can be off somewhat. And so included in that number would be both variable delivery charges and the capital and maintenance costs.
But they're not split out.
They're not split out on this report, no.
Okay, thanks.
And additionally, if you look month over month, sometimes it does seem a lot, it's steady and less and around the same, but then there's a couple times throughout the year where some of the charges are broken out into 12 payments throughout the year. Other charges are broken out into large payments. So you'll get 2 months with really large slugs of payments as well. So that's a lot of times the variability along with the variable charges that you see.
And that would be the case for the month of September. So we did have one of those large capital component payments made in September.
Did this report include water sales? Did I miss that? In other words, our customers are using more or less water than we budgeted for. Right, and I had a question on that, and we had almost an exchange on the email on that. It seemed like that number was more last year or about a year ago. It seemed like it might have been hovering around 7 or 4%. Am I wrong about that?
No, that is correct. So last year, our water sales all year did trend well over budget by anywhere from like 7 to 10%. So this year, it's a little bit more in line with what the budget was. And actually, you will see that consumption is down a little bit compared to last year. But with the rate increases, that's why we're still seeing the sales be a little bit over budget.
Yeah, well, that's where the question that I had last meeting was about if that percentage was based on the budgeted amount or last year's, and then I confused myself with too much input in my mind. And then that's where I got lost. But now I'm fully abreast. Thank you.
If I may add, so when we determine what the budget's going to be, we are looking at historical. And so last year, when we were looking at the historical, we look at recent history because we feel that that's the best indicator of people's current behaviors, as well as we know, okay, we're going to be pressing for conservation. So we probably want to add a little bit on conservation so we don't project that we have more revenue than what is realistic. So sometimes we do take it a little bit conservative in thinking that, okay, we're going to have some conservation because we know we're heading into heavy conservation, but we are not always, people's habits, they're individual to them. We're trying to influence them as much as possible, but they change. So it is based off of what we assumed it was going to be, and therefore that provided us the level of revenue that we believed that we could budget for, whether it be capital, normal operating expenses, and other expenditures that the agency will have. Things end up differently in reality, but every year we are able to do a reset. And with that reset in the budgeting process, we look where we are now, where we believe will be projected at the end of the year. What's the difference? What do we think we're going to have left over, under? And then we build that into the following. And so then that becomes funds that are available to reallocate in the future. So they don't continue to trend up or trend down. We have an opportunity to reset and kind of reevaluate where we're at. And so that's why you see last year was a little bit more difference. This year we were able to kind of tone it in a little bit better with what we thought the reality was going to come out to be.
Thank you. Director McKenna?
I have a question about our bond portfolio. I get increasingly uncomfortable with the actions of certain corporations in this state, and I'm thinking of Chevron and ExxonMobil. Their bonds, corporate bonds, are highly rated. I'm not saying there's a risk here, but I wonder if we could bring forth a discussion about whether or not we should be invested in companies like that. I don't think they operate in the public interests and not in the interest of our public. So I'd like that to open up that discussion at some point.
If I may, is that a topic that you would like seen to be brought to the Finance Committee first before we bring it to this full board? Because we do have our investment strategy that we do discuss in that forum.
Yeah, I think that's the appropriate way to do it.
Okay,
Sure.
thank you.
Thank you. Secretary Treasurer Bloomer,
No
Question?
questions.
for yourself?
No questions for myself.
All right.
That I know of.
And I have none. So we can move to item 10, which would be the general manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. On October 17th, 2025, DWR submitted the certification of consistency for the Delta Conveyance Project to the Delta Stewardship Council, and that is required under the Delta Reform Act. And this certification confirms that the project aligns with the Delta's plan, policies, and regulations. So that certification is a self-certification, so it is DWR submitting it, indicating that we are asserting that we are in compliance with the applicable water quality standards and endangered species protection requirements. It also is an assertion that the administrative record includes environmental permits, engineering memoranda and comments, and other outreach materials. And with the submission of this certification of consistency, it opens up a 30-day window for appeals, which is now open. And stakeholders may challenge the certification if they believe that this certification, project conflicts with the Delta Plan policies and would have a significant adverse impact to what are called the co-equal goals, which is water supply reliability, ecosystem restoration, and preservation of the Delta as a place. So the next steps, if appealed, then the Delta Stewardship Council will have a public hearing within 60 days to determine whether there is substantial evidence to support DWR's findings. And the outcomes, there's 3 potential outcomes to an appeal. And the hearing is that, number one, first, a dismissal of the appeal could happen, which means it's not an appealable issue. Number 2, the second outcome would be denial. So it means the certification stands and that the Stewardship Council has determined that the record that DWR has submitted supports the certification. And the last one is that it can be remanded for reconsideration. Essentially, then that means that it is something that can be appealed, and the council finds that the claims are not supported by substantial evidence, and then it essentially gets sent back, and then DWR would have to correct whatever it was and then resubmit. And this submission, it does mark a critical milestone in advancing the Delta Conveyance Project while ensuring regulatory compliance and transparency. On Wednesday, October 22nd, DWA hosted another blood drive. LifeStream Blood Bank was here on premise and has indicated that it was a successful drive with 11 donors registered and 12 units of collected, and that included 3 first-time donors. And just a reminder for Veterans Day, which is Tuesday, November 11th, the agency offices will be closed in observance of Veterans Day. And on the 30th, so last Thursday, the agency held its open enrollment and benefits fair. Open enrollment is currently open to our employees and board directors for the certain benefits that you're eligible for. And those benefit providers were here in attendance to answer any questions that staff may have had. So United Way, there is a food drive that is going on right now. The agency, we are hosting a food drive in partnership with Inland SoCal United Way, because right now over 86,000 households in Riverside County, which represents a little over 250,000 individuals, are facing the loss of SNAP benefits, which will limit their access to food and put them at risk of hunger and increased food insecurity. So local food pantries are running low on supplies. And so the agency is chipping in to do what we can to help to obtain more donations. So we are requesting that employees and customers donate non-expired, unopened, unused food items between October 31st and November 17th. We do have boxes here at the agency, within the agency, for staff members, as well as we have one in the lobby, in the DWA lobby office, so that customers can also contribute. And we do have a listing of suggested donated items, and there's more information on Inland SoCal's website. This last week on Tuesday, October 28th and Wednesday, October 29th, the agency hosted its annual facilities tour. We did used to have a biannual tour, so twice a year we had a tour of our facilities, alternating locations, but this was a revamped, reimagined tour, moving it to an annual tour, but it has been expanded to really show the cycle of water here at the agency and everything that we do, from importation and water source all the way to use and reuse. So this tour, we had several stops, which included a new stop, which was Coachella Valley Water District's Whitewater River Replenishment Facility, which was very impressive. Previously, we've taken customers, participants to the Mission Creek Replenishment Facility, but had the opportunity to do a joint stop on the tour with CVWD. We also took them up to a lunch at the Palisades Reservoir, which got rave reviews. Everyone wanted to post on their social media that they had an exclusive lunch by limo. Of course, we know it was a bus to up in the Palisades. So they got a kick out of that, but the views were great. And also we had a wonderful time being able to converse with the participants as they learned up close on how the agency manages to deliver water through our system. And while on the tour, I heard some great reviews. Notably, I had one individual come to me and say that they've been on several water facilities tours, but Desert Water Agencies by far exceeded them all. And he was very happy to be in attendance. And the tour was coordinated and led by our Public Affairs Department, who did an excellent job and was supported by operations, conservation, construction, engineering staff. And it really was a smooth process, very informative to our participants. In total, we had about 85 over the course of the last 2 days. And also it provided us the opportunity to invite some of our own staff on the tour. And this provides the opportunity for our newer staff or those who haven't seen these facilities that they hear about. They're just either here in the office or their duties they're very defined and they only see a certain type of facilities, but it gives them the broad picture of the agency and what we do. So it helps to give them a better understanding of where they fit into that essential service that we provide to our community. And we also were able to have one of our legal counsels, Holland, with us. I had blanked out. I'm sorry, Holland Stewart. That was bad. He was able to attend with us also to see the entirety of what we do here as he is working and supporting us a little bit more in the recent history. So overall, it was an excellent tour and we have some great pictures there. And we also did some social media posts as well, providing an overview of the tour. So moving on to our system leaks. We had, over the past 2 weeks since our last board meeting, we just had 12 leaks. So that's, fingers crossed we stay there. But of course, we know that our replacement pipelines, they are a very critical and important program that we have going on here, because while that is low this time, that does not mean when the temperature shifts that we will not see an increase. So we want to make sure that we keep focused on those replacements as much as possible. So moving on to our Director of Public Affairs and Conservation meeting and events, I'll pass it over to Director of Public Affairs and Conservation, Lort.
Thank you, General Manager Sines, President Ortega, members of the board, good morning. So in front of you, you've got quite a lengthy list of different activities for the month of October. I want to highlight a couple. We've increased our participation with the Palm Springs Unified School District this past month. Directors Bloomer and Gracia, as well as Sochi Pena, we attended the Palm Springs Unified School District annual gala event for their foundation. Additionally, we also attended, Director Bloomer and I attended the PSUSD legislative breakfast as well. That's something that myself and our Public Affairs Department, we would like to continue to increase, is that relationship with the school district. I also did some FEMA SEMS training related to emergency management. And then the week of October 13th through the 16th, I was in Washington, D.C. with Drake Wood, our federal advocate. And I just wanted to highlight a few of the meetings there. So we met with our delegation, which includes Congressman Calvert and Ruiz, as well as Senators Padilla and Schiff. So we met with staff. We also had meetings with staff from the House Natural Resources Subcommittee on Water, Wildlife, and Fisheries, and then also the House Natural Resources Committee from the minority side, as well as the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee on the majority side. There's an office for both majority and minority. And then we also met with Ian Lyle, who's Aqua's Federal Affairs Director out in DC, just to give him an introduction and overview of DWA, as well as our federal priorities. The intent of this trip was not necessarily to meet with the members themselves, but to continue building that staff-to-staff relationship. There is always significant amount of turnover, and so there were some new staff members that we had met with, and then some existing relationships that we were able to build upon. In addition to our federal priorities, we briefly talked about upcoming legislation regarding the settlement agreement. We talked about salinity along the Colorado River. And then we mentioned that DWA is getting creative related to the Water Conservation Tax Parity Act and working with the IRS department. And we actually had some good momentum on that right before the shutdown. So whenever that opens back up, we hope that we can pick up where that left off. And then, as mentioned, the tour facilities, and last Friday on the 30th, I attended CSDA's annual legislative planning meeting for year 2 of the 2-year state legislative cycle. Back to you, General Manager Sines. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to highlight a few of my activities over the past couple weeks. So on the 23rd, we management met and we had a mission, vision, values, and strategic plan implementation planning. So we are getting ready to bring the strategic plan to this board for review and approval at the next board meeting. And so we are gearing up to make sure that we have a good implementation of that, to roll it out to all staff. And so we have begun those planning efforts. On the 27th, last Monday, I attended the Esri Water Leadership Summit. So in Redlands at the Esri offices, they held a leadership summit where several general managers as well as other senior leaders within water organizations met together, not just to talk about what can GIS or Esri do for us as agencies as we contract with them for their GIS services and their software, but what are the challenges that we're facing and how we can use technology to help do those things, solve those issues. So it was a great time to be able to meet with other water leaders from Southern California. I think the furthest away was Ventura County that was there. So we had opportunity to really discuss and engage things that were going on in our agencies, which is a great opportunity, and also networking opportunity as well. And then yesterday we held an emergency response planning meeting. So we had several individuals from within the agency. We are in the process, we've had a few meetings already where we're taking a look at our emergency response planning and really taking a deep dive into what are some areas for improvement, what do we actually do, make sure that everyone is on the same page with our plans and what level of engagements involved at what level of a disaster, to make sure that we are prepared for if and when a natural disaster or other event happens that impacts our water infrastructure. We need to make sure that we are prepared to respond quickly and respond well to ensure that we maintain the quality of our water as well as supply for our community. So that process will be continuing over the months and years. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Great, thank you. Director Gracia, questions?
Do you think the people that, when you're talking about salinity on the river, is it your feeling that these people are taking that as serious as it needs to be taken, or are they just kind of giving it, you know?
Thank you for the question, Director Grasha. I do believe so. It has been a part of DWA's talking points for the last couple of years, and General Manager Sines as well. What we mainly refer to when we're talking salinity is the Paradox Valley unit,
Right.
which is in the Dolores River Valley area out in Colorado. And that is why we had meetings with the House Natural Resources and some of the Senate committees, because we are trying to bring light to that issue. I think they're taking it seriously. On the staff side, we are working with Metropolitan, who they chair the Colorado River Salinity Control Forum Board. That's a mouthful. And we've actually are setting up quarterly briefings with them on the staff side so that we can also be looped in that discussion to further our own talking points when we're out there. But I do believe they're taking it very seriously. And especially outside of the committee offices, I would say our delegation offices as well, because obviously, you know, they represent our areas and they understand what happens if it continues to get saltier, right? And the potential costs that might be borne both to the agency and the customers. So we're definitely.
So Paradox Valley came up in one of our first meetings when I was on this board, and it just seemed like all they had to do was line that concrete liner and that would solve that problem. I don't know if that's true or oversimplification, but it just seemed like that was an easy fix and they can move on. And our river water would be a lot better. I don't know what percentage better, but a lot better. A lot of salt comes down through that valley and into our drinking.
It's a pretty complex issue because it's unfortunately not as simple, and we all wish it would be as simple as that. The issue with Paradox Valley is the seismic earthquake activity. So they remove the salty brine from the river and then inject that back into the ground. And it's the injection of the brine that actually is creating that seismic activity. And so this is a Bureau facility, a Bureau of Reclamation facility. And so we're trying to decide where we're trying to encourage rather the Bureau to come up with a plan for when this facility reaches its end of life, which we don't know when that might be. What are the plans moving forward? And so we hope that there's some sort of facility or project along the way that will continue to remove some of the salt in the river as it makes its way to the lower basin.
And that brings us to the Coachella Valley, where we are living in the same situation where we're not getting rid of our salt brine. It just stays here and we keep recirculating it, and our solids numbers continue to increase. And there's only two options. We can either do what they're doing up there in Paradox Valley, and that's deep well injection. I don't think the state's going to let us get away with that. But the only other option is to build a link to the Inland Empire's brine line, which I can't imagine that ever being something we could afford. But either way, we've got to start talking about this serious issue of salinity in our water here in the valley and its constant increase. And that salt nutrient management plan that's being talked about, eventually they're going to have to address that. Instead of just stating where we are today with the problem, they're going to have to, the state.
Director Grasha.
Yes, sir.
Let's agendize this.
Okay.
Not talk too much more about it. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. So you can see we're heading in the right direction.
I want to talk about leaks. Indian Canyon looks just awful so far this year. And also, I'm always nervous when I see Vista Chino on this list. Big water main, big important street. What's the timeline you anticipate for replacing those mains?
Vista Chino is a high priority. And what we've done is we really have looked back at previous general plans. So Vista Chino is a 20-inch main. And we've looked back at general plans in the past to see doesn't need to be a 20-inch main because there's a very large main going down via Escuela, which is about a mile to the north. So that main, there's two large transmission mains that come from Palm Springs North, the 12 million gallon reservoir. One is on Via Escuela, and it's a relatively new main, and the other one is Vista Chino. So we've looked back to see why are we replacing Vista Chino with a large main when we have another large main in Via Escuela that's a large transmission main? They both meet up at Caballeros. So Via Escuela goes to Caballeros and then goes south on Caballeros. Vista Chino meets up on Caballeros. Both of those mains meet up on Caballeros. So we've really been looking at, do we need it? And we've been having Krieger and Stewart do an analysis, system analysis to look and say, could we replace it with an 8-inch or a 12-inch? Vista Chino is a very complicated street. There's multiple utilities. It seems like every utility company has 2 utilities on Vista Chino. It's Caltrans right away. It's very challenging to do it. And so we've run into these roadblocks of every alignment we choose, there's a problem with another utility. But if we can downsize the main, it makes it much easier to construct. You don't have to be as deep. So we're looking at that right now. And Krieger and Stewart is currently running a simulation to see, could we replace it with a 12-inch main? And then there's other areas that we could upsize the main and get the same water capacity. Indian Canyon, that one, it's on our list, and we just have other priorities that we're working through right now. So part of the priorities are aligning with the City of Palm Springs paving program. So we're trying to match pace with Palm Springs paving, and that one is not on their list for paving. So we're focusing on streets that they've listed that they want to pave. So that we're working on those areas first.
Since you mentioned paving, you just triggered another thought. I drive Vista Chino all the time. When Caltrans did the recent paving job, which is a really beautiful job, we have a lot of valve pits that are lower than the rest of the street. Is it their responsibility or ours to fix that?
So they've never talked to us about raising the valves. Generally, the utility that does the work is responsible for raising the valves. But they've never contacted or coordinated. It's been like pulling teeth with Caltrans. They started this whole project without contacting us. We had to, on the spot, relocate hydrants, air vacs, sample stations. Basically, they came through like a bull in a china shop and just told us to get out of the way. And so the coordination has been less than desirable with Caltrans.
Well, then they owe us a favor. Let's contact them, because it's a bit like speed bumps. If you drive the left-hand eastbound lane, you go bump, 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 bump. These are a big difference. Gene Autry has a little bit of the same problem in the left-hand lane of the southbound side. So, yeah, let's talk to them. I don't want to pay for more shock absorbers.
Secretary Treasurer Bloomer.
No questions.
All right. This is not really a question, but maybe more of a comment related to some of the activities that Director York talked about. So I attended last week the College of the Desert Foundation event here at the Thompson. And the only reason I'm bringing that up, I didn't attend that as a representative of this board. I just happened to attend, but there were a lot of other organizations that were there, including mostly municipalities and other educational related and other groups that were not necessarily there representing education, but mentioning the Palm Springs Foundation event that several people in this room attended triggered that, and thinking, why or should we possibly consider that for future? That's all. All right. So next we can move to directors' reports on meetings and events attended on behalf of the agency. So this is an opportunity for each board member to report out to, in this meeting, an event or a meeting that they attended recently on the behalf of the agency. Please remember to include the date as well as the event. And we'll start with Director Gracia.
So going back to the 21st, which was our last board meeting, I guess. On the 22nd, I attended the Aqua-sponsored FBI InfraGard cybersecurity training class. I did that last year as well. It was a very good event. If you ever get a chance, it's worth attending. And then on the 28th, the Coachella Valley Water District board meeting. And there was a couple of interesting things that there's talk now, I guess, of completely eliminating the Salton Sea Authority, which was created in the bill that Sonny Bono sponsored in the 90s created that. And now there's, I guess it's pretty serious, the board members of the authority are talking about disbanding it. And that was a subject of conversation during the last CVWD board meeting. So we'll see if how that comes along. But it's interesting that CVWD contributes $250,000 a year to that. And it was clear on the, 2 decades ago that was not going to have any real effect on cleaning up the Salton Sea. So it's good to see that it's at least being given some consideration of disposing of that organization. And then we had the annual tour, and I must say straight A's across the board. Everybody did a great job. I think everybody had to learn something. Every single person on the tour learned something. And I can tell you that it would have saved 20 years had I had that tour when I started on this path to getting on the water board. I imagine it took 20 years before I realized DWA was an organization to understand at least that much of what this agency is responsible for and what does. And I hope that, next year, hopefully the economy improves and we're able to see even more attendance. I guess there were a couple of seats, and so A+ for everybody. And that's it. That brings us to today.
Thank you. Director McKenna.
I have no meetings to report.
All right. And Secretary Treasurer Bloomer.
I was sorry to miss the tour, but I did have on 10/28 an audit interview with our auditors, which was just as exciting as the tour, I'm sure. And on 10/30, I was an alternate for the executive committee meeting, and that's it.
Thank you. So on 10/23, I attended the Region 2 event at Oroville, which included a visit first to the salmon, or the salmon and a trout fish hatchery that's at the base of the dam, a few miles south of the dam. And that was very informative, if not somewhat gory, as far as the process of harvesting eggs and going through the incubation process, but quite informative. That was started in 1968 with the completion of Oroville Dam. And then we took a tour of the dam. We actually we were parked at the top of the dam and had a very interesting, lively discussion with the sheriff of Butte County, who was the one who ordered the evacuation of the southern part of the county when the spillway was possibly going to fail back in February of 2017. He was a very interesting character, but he was the kind of person that likes to see the silver lining in things. And even though that was quite a traumatic event for a lot of people, apparently, in that part of California that could have been impacted by possible flooding, he did see the silver lining, and that they learned through the process. His department learned through that process methods of dealing with an emergency that then came into play the following year during the Paradise Fire, which was very close by. So that was interesting talk. So got to see the repairs that had been made, the almost $1.2 billion worth of repairs that were made to that facility. Most of it apparently funded by FEMA. But then in the process, again, they were able to make changes to their operation and some of the ways that the initial infrastructure had been planned and developed, including removing power lines from next to the emergency spillway, which were in danger of toppling over, as well as a service road that they had that was built on the other side of the dam that, of course, was inaccessible when the dam was about to top. But I felt it was important to go see that, since that's such a big part of the State Water Project, and it's something that our taxpayers in this Coachella Valley help pay for. And very interesting. And then we took a tour of the museum at the visitor center, where there was a lot of additional information about how that project came about and so on. Some very old footage from the time the development of the project, and it was kind of fun to see that. And then on 10/27, I did the security training from Know Before. 10/29 was the and this was a non-compensable event, was the Mission Creek Subbasin workshop. 10/29 was also the Region 9 board meeting, the quarterly board meeting. And 11/03 would be, which was yesterday, was the the incoming chairs and vice chairs for the 10 regions of Aqua, and sort of the review of roles and responsibilities for the coming 2 years. And that's that. So now we can move to director's comments and requests. Director Gracia.
A couple of things. I think I sent an email about this. If I didn't, to the general manager about the reclamation taking over the talks of Colorado River situation, and that board not being able to reach agreement. They're talking about taking it to the federal government, and then kind of from there laying out the agreement, and it'll be a kind of a take it or leave it, or not even that. There'll be no longer a negotiation. It'll be whatever they say, and that is probably not in anyone's interest, I don't think. Maybe we'll be lucky, and maybe I'm overly concerned, but I'm not. I don't think so. I think we're looking at long-term debilitating drought on the river, and I think that puts us a little bit in jeopardy. I'm glad we're going to that conference next month. It wasn't just the one article, and now there's been a follow-up to it. I think Politico came out with something, and I tried to read it, but there was a paywall, and I figured I already read it from the Salt Lake Tribune. But anyway, there's that, and I guess that's about it. I've got more on this the salinity situation here in the valley and my concerns. I've got a whole body of work that I've done, and I'll be bringing it to the board as we move forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Director McKenna.
A follow-up to something I said at the last meeting. Mission Springs Water District contacted me right away and said that my not being able to record their meeting or get a transcript was some kind of default option in the Zoom. So perhaps our staff would look at that too, just in case we have that option enabled. We should really let the public record and transcribe these meetings. I hope we do. In a similar vein, I was overseas and could not open the agenda. Apparently, this PrimeGov site is blocked to overseas traffic. So maybe we could put a PDF of the agenda on the website somewhere else that it's accessible. I know the board assistant secretary sent me a PDF when I asked for it, but it would be, let's just open this thing up. Finally, it's election day today. I'm sure everyone in this room is going to vote or has voted. It's important. Whichever way you vote, vote today.
Thank you. Secretary Treasurer Bloomer.
No comments or requests. Thanks.
And I have none. So with that, we can move into closed session. We will now adjourn to closed session to discuss items 13A and 13B as shown on the agenda. And it's of course, if we could meet at 9:45 in the board conference room. Thank you. All right, we are back in open session. And I can state that we had no actionable item to be reported on today. And with that, we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much.